Um, I've seen King Kong numerous times by now. Sort of like you, I also forget like when was the first time that happened. I feel like I was very young and it was probably on TV. Um, 5 or 6 maybe. I watched it several times in high school. So this was maybe like the 10th time or something that I saw it. But I'd never seen it on the big screen before
Yeah.
with like you said, like a packed house or whatever. And it's a totally different experience. And I think also like when you watch it and you're young, you're just like, oh, it's a big ape, cool. But like
Hmm.
when you get older, you realize like all the context of the movie and like what was going on in Hollywood and just in like the United States at the time. And it takes on a little bit more complexity in like both good and bad ways, you know?
Yeah, huge amount of social context with the film's release and context with 90 years since its release. Like
Yeah.
where our society has gone in attitudes about all sorts of things since 1933.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is hard to watch some of these scenes in King Kong without like modern awareness, and I'm definitely a believer that like you need to place historical things in their context and maybe not like condone them, but certainly understand like what was going on at the time. But like it's very, very hard to do that with some scenes in King Kong. So I'm sure we'll talk about that soon.
Yeah, I'd love to get into all that.
Totally.
Hmm.
All right. The story's probably pretty familiar to a lot of people, but should we jump into the plot of King Kong?
Sure.
Cool.
All right, so we have filmmaker Carl Denham. He's known for making spectacular adventure movies in jungles and other exotic settings, and he's about to set sail from New York on a chartered ship called the Venture. He's been told that he needs to have a romantic subplot in his next film, so he finds a young woman named Anne Darrow on the streets of New York and promises her the adventure of a lifetime. I should also add that this is set in 1933 at the height of the Depression, so Anne Darrow, as an out of work actress, or is she an actor in this movie? I can't remember. Either way, she needs some money, and she's game. So the next morning, the Venture sets sail. After which Denham informs the crew that they're headed for the mysterious Skull Island, an uncharted territory on which a beast named Kong supposedly dwells.
After landing on the island, the crew encounters a native village where a group of natives are preparing to sacrifice a young woman to be the bride of Kong. After spotting Anne among the intruders, the natives offer to trade 6 of their own women for Anne, but the crew refuses and heads back to the ship. That night, the natives steal onto the Venture and kidnap Anne, taking her back to the island, where she is brought through a massive gate and tied to an altar as an offering to Kong, who turns out to be a massive ape.
Denham and the crew of the Venture race into the jungle after Anne, who has been taken away by Kong. On the island, they find a number of fantastic creatures, including dinosaurs and massive aquatic beasts. The ship's first mate, Driscoll, who has fallen in love with Anne, eventually tracks her down and rescues her as Kong is busy fighting a pteranodon. Kong chases them back to the gate near where the ship is anchored, where the gorilla is subdued by Denham's gas bombs and brought back to the United States as a marvelous attraction, dubbed the eighth wonder of the world. In New York, however, tragedy strikes atop the Empire State Building, where beauty kills the beast. It is yeah, I mean the ending is legendary, and you forget when I came back to this movie as an adult, I didn't realize how much action and adventure existed in this movie beyond the final third in New York.
Yeah.
Skull Island is a nightmare world of all sorts of giant monsters, and it's awesome.
It is, yeah. From the moment that Kong appears, it's kind of like a nonstop action for the rest of the movie, like probably about an hour or so, maybe a little bit more. Uh, watching it this last time, I was like, being on Skull Island is probably what like living in Australia is like. Every time you turn around, there's like a huge spider, like a snake, or like a shark, or like something waiting to kill you. It's probably the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
um
Yeah,
what
never
else?
been to Australia.
Huh?